It's a great pleasure to have James back again with us. This is nearly the 1 year has passed by, and we've been interviewing James, and he's come up every time with more and more, and every time with a very refreshing and yet a different outlook to the chart. So James, a hearty welcome to you, and it's a pleasure. It is like, we've been doing this reading interviews for past 1 year, and it just seems like we started yesterday.
It does. I'm surprised it's a year. There's something possibly auspicious about today's interview. I thought, I'm running out of things to teach. What do I have to teach? I did get an email from someone saying, could you please tell us how you read a chart? That's an outrageous question. It's a great question. But the reason I think that something auspicious may be happening is because in thinking about doing this and looking at the charts, some thoughts came into my head, which may be connected to Jupiter. Jupiter has changed signs for a week or two. And Jupiter is now in my 8th house, the house of astrology. And Jupiter's in Sagittarius, Jupiter's own sign. And I came to some very important conclusions about something I have not said clearly. I may have mentioned it, but never clearly. Today I'm going to address this. First of all, I was in India twice, 1982 and 1984. On several YouTubes, I said 82, 83 and 84, but in fact, I found my records. I was there in 82 and late 82, November, December, and then the summer of 84.
This summer? How did you manage this summer?
I didn't. It was so hot. But I'm from Florida, which is hot, but it was brutal. In any case, that was Bombay. You know what the answer to your question is? I saw my teacher, Padya, at night from 7 to 11. In the daytime, I went to the movie theater, which was not air conditioned, but there were fans. And I saw the worst comedy ever. It was a Mel Brooks film called The History of the World, Part 1 and 2. The reason I remember it is because I went there every day to deal with the heat. Anyway, that aside. When I was in India the first time, I was there for 4 months. And I traveled around and, people said, will you learn Hindu astrology? I said, if it's possible, but I didn't, think it was because I had seen the books. And I went around and I actually had found people. I think I only paid for one reading. The others were people who, looked at the chart, etc. And I didn't study with those people that had done my chart because I wasn't impressed. Eventually, I found a teacher, went to a bookstore. He told me about a good teacher, Santanam. But in both of those trips to India, the second time I didn't travel around. I found Padya the second day I was there. But I was with Santanam for 6 weeks. I was with Padya for 4 weeks. I intended to stay longer, but I got dysentery and I was 115 pounds. And I realized this is too dangerous. I got on a plane and left. But 6 weeks and 4 weeks. And we looked at horoscopes every day, lots of horoscopes. And of course, my horoscope was the most important. I never got a satisfying reading in India, and not from my mentors either. And there's no disrespect to my mentors. They were great. But I never got a satisfying reading. And as the years went by, I said, oh, it's probably because I'm looking at my chart every day and they weren't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that really wasn't the reason that the readings weren't satisfied. Of course, we would look at certain parts of my horoscope. The problem was that, now, also I have to mention, I started as a Western astrologer. I'd been doing Western astrology 3 or 4 years, not professionally, but I knew what I was doing. And in the Western system, the degrees are critical. The degrees are critical. And I remember being not surprised, but stunned, absolutely stunned, that the horoscope formats had the planets inside and the degrees on the outside. And this is why I never got a good reading. It's because when you're looking at degrees outside of the horoscope, it's possible that you might notice a planet in 320 degrees conjunct a planet in 325 degrees. You might note, oh, that's within 5 degrees. But the truth is, you really can't do it that way unless you have, unless you're autistic and have phenomenal math abilities. It can't be done, because when Mars throws its 4th house aspect. Now, in the charts that I use, because I'm a Westerner and because the Jyotish charts drawn in America, they put the degrees in there. So if Mars is 3 degrees of Virgo and there's a planet in 5 degrees Sagittarius, you know it's hitting within 2 or 3 degrees. You'll not notice that when you're looking at degrees on the outside. So I cannot emphasize enough the difference that's going to make in the readings. So I have a horoscope where everybody should know my horoscope by now. It's in all my books. The 10th house ruler is Saturn. It's in the 5th house. It's about 15 degrees away from the sun. But Saturn is 14 Virgo and Jupiter is 14 Pisces. So it's not just that Jupiter is aspecting Saturn. It's that Jupiter is aspecting Saturn to the degree. That tells the astrologer this person 100%, not 70%, 100% needs to have a career that is Jupiterian. That could be children, that could be investments, that could be spiritual. But that right there tells you a spiritual career in my case, or children, or investments. Then you see that Jupiter is the ruler of the 8th house, and it's aspecting the 10th house ruler. Now, when I got a reading from about 12, 15 years after I was in India, I finally got a Brigu reading. I tried to get a Brigu reading the first week I was in India. Nature messed it up every which way it could. 15 years later, I get a Brigu reading. It says he'll be an astrologer. It says he'll write books. It says he'll use astrology in a more spiritual way. I use mantras and yagyas more than most Westerners. So the Brigu people got it correct, but I believe that's probably psychic because they were writing thousands of years ago. But neither of my astrologers said, oh, you're going to be an astrologer. Look, the 8th ruler is aspecting the 10th ruler to the degree. Nobody said that. Nobody said, oh, you have a spiritual career because Jupiter's aspecting to the degree. Nobody said you have immense troubles with elder siblings because Saturn is 14 and Jupiter is in Pisces.
In 11th house itself.
Right, but Saturn is 14 and Saturn hits Jupiter exact. Mars is in Leo at 14. Mars is hitting Jupiter exact. Now, any astrologer worth anything, if they are using the degrees, is not going to say, oh, look, Jupiter is hit by Mars and Saturn, but it's okay because Jupiter's in its own sign. If you have the degrees, and the only way to have the degrees is to put them in the chart. It's the only way. So this is up to you. It's up to the students. You can say, well, I'll miss that part of it. I will tell you this. If I, like, the way this came about was you drew the horoscopes and I looked at them and I said, I can't use this. I almost sent you an email. And then I said, oh yeah, those are the charts. It's just that the degrees are outside. But I will tell you this. If I didn't have the degrees, I would have no use. I would have no use for astrology. If you have psychic ability, you may pick these things up. But you have to see, is Mars aspecting Jupiter 25 degrees away? Or is Mars aspecting it 2 degrees away? This is the essence. This is the essence.
Right.
Okay?
The close conjunction and the loose conjunction or just a waiver makes all the difference, as you would say in the chart, right?
Not just conjunction. The conjunctions will be the easiest for people to see when the numbers are outside the chart. That's not so hard to see. If you have a planet in Taurus, might have one in 40 and one in 49. So you'll actually notice it, maybe, if you're looking for it. There's no way that you're going to see the aspect that one of those planets throws to 4 houses away, to 7 houses away, to 10 houses. You're not going to see it. So,
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean, because we there are not paying attention to the degrees as you've seen. So we miss out on a lot of factors. We do.
So as I thought about this, I thought some people are not going to want to hear this, because this is how it was done thousands of years ago. You can take Jyotish as a religion, and you can take it the way it was done. That way is the only way to do it, or you can speed up the times. Just like cultures, you have cultures that are where the cultures are still back in the 1200s and the 900s, and if you choose to live that way, that's fine. But there's no way to be accurate. If you want to be accurate, you can be accurate psychically, but you cannot be accurate. I'm going to show you a chart where the ascendant is 9 degrees. And Saturn's...
but James, I'd like to just say that, there's a lot of mathematics that does go behind, even in the Vedic astrology, and making the charts, the divisional charts, everything. So the degree does matter, because even in the Navamsh, when I'm doing the Navamsh, when I'm making the Navamsh,
I'm talking visual. You need to be able to see it visually. So when you see Saturn, I'm going to show you a chart where the ascendant is 9 degrees, and in the 4th house is Saturn at 13 degrees. So Saturn is aspecting that ascendant within 3.5 degrees.
Yes.
Mars is in the 6th house aspecting the ascendant 11 degrees, and the ascendant is 9 degrees.
2.5.
This is a person whose confidence was not good, whose sense of self was not good, was very bad.
Right.
And those aspects, so just back to this point, you need to think about this very, very, very seriously. If you get a computer program from, I don't know if they have them in India, but if you get them from America, you'll find that they put the degrees in there, and you'll be able to see them. And you have to start considering how important the difference is. Because, in my own case, there was from the age of around 30, there was such a strong impulse that my career needed to be spiritual. There was such a strong impulse that there would be some fame or recognition. I didn't know it would be astrology, but I knew it should be spiritual, and I had a sense that there would be some kind of big career. But nobody told me these things. If I'm doing a reading and I see this, it's one of the first things I'll tell them, because the planetary degrees are hitting so strong. And likewise, this is very similar to when we did the chart of Alexander, what was his name? The one who discovered penicillin.
Yes, Alexander. Okay.
Yeah. So this is another thing that happens, where I was showing you that Saturn is destroyed because it's in the 20th degree of Aries, the worst placement. Right. Hillary Clinton had she entered the Sun dasha, and the Sun is this was a week before the email scandal came out. A week before that, she went into the Sun, and the Sun is in the 10th degree of Libra. So many Jyotishis that are from India do not see this because they're not looking for it in that way. So it is about, I'm going to say this, in the last year, what I've just told you is the most important piece of information that I could teach you. That's how I want to emphasize this. And I think, as I think about it, maybe Jupiter going into my 8th house had that come up. And I also want to say one other thing. I made a prediction about gold a couple of years ago, And I had noticed that when Rahu, everybody says when Jupiter goes into Leo, it's great for gold. But if you do the research, you find that once in a while it's good. Most of the time it's not, doesn't do anything. But I noticed that when Jupiter and Rahu went into Leo, the gold rush occurred, first of all, in 1849. There was a gold rush, Rahu and Jupiter in Leo. And then later on, in 1979, gold went from, I don't know, $100 up to $800, and silver went from $2-3 to $48. This was in the period when Rahu Jupiter was in Leo. So I saw it coming in 2016, and I said, in January, Rahu enters Leo along with Jupiter. Put your money into the gold stocks, right? And I got several emails from Indians. They said, Rahu, you're using the true node. Do not use the true node. The mean node, and they explained why. I can't remember it, but it has something to do with the fact that Rahu and Ketu go backwards most of the time. But they said, it's not going to happen in January. It's going to happen in February. And sure enough, February 1st or January 30th, it went in, the North Node went into Leo using the mean node. I used the true node. I never knew what the hell the difference was. I used the true node because true sounded better to me. But it's the mean node that should be used. Now, you may say, this is not critical. The mean node changes the node by 1 degree. What's the big deal?
No, but it is.
The big deal is in the Dasamsha and the Navamsha and the Varga charts, because the Varga charts change every 15 minutes. So I was looking at this, and what you've got here is the true node. And I noticed that the Ketu was in a different house from the Navamsha. So these are two very important points. Use the mean node, and you've got to put the degrees in the chart so you can see how tight the aspects are or how weak they are. Okay.
Alexander Fleming.
Right. So a client asked me, can you talk about how you read a chart? I said, what on earth are you asking? The question of how I do a chart, I said, oh my God, what kind of question is this? And I said, could you clarify a little bit what you mean? And the person said, well, I see some astrologers saying they're doing a horoscope and they go, the ruler of the first house is in the 8th, and it means this. The ruler of the second house is in the 3rd, and it means this. And they go step by step by step by step. And in the early days of doing astrology, I think that's kind of how you have to do it. To some extent, I don't know. I mean, I remember how difficult it was in the early days. There's so much information that you have to take into account. But I'm just going to answer the question as I do it now, okay? And of course, now is different than before. But the way I feel when I'm looking at a horoscope, analyzing it before I do it for the person, I like to look at the chart the day before a little bit, and then not for a long time, but just to get a sense of whether it's going to be an easy chart or a complicated chart, whether it's going to be a chart that's a person's life is pretty good or lousy. I just like to get a feeling for that. The main study that I do is an hour or two before the session. And when I started astrology, I spent 3 or 4 days on a chart. I mean, I spent hours and hours and hours, but of course that gets faster. But the way when I'm looking at the chart, as I'm looking at it, and I see this particular influence, the moon is in the 9th house, so they like religion or philosophy or whatever. As I'm looking at it, I am making no judgments yet. Because I have to see everything. Okay, moon in the 9th. Okay, so I know what that means. Well, actually, let's look at this chart here. So I will see, the moon is in the 9th house here. So the moon and the sun, two very important planets are in the ninth house. So I see this. I consider the most important influences to be the ascendant and the moon. And when I'm looking at the chart myself, I'm going to look at everything. But then when I draw my conclusions about the lifetime, I will give a little overview for a minute. Okay, so in this chart, I would say, there's a lot of religion, philosophy, energy, and the third house is very strong because the sun, Venus, moon are aspecting the third. I'll just give a little overview about the chart. And then after I do the overview, I go straight to the first house and straight to the moon to say whether the original essential experience is easy or difficult, successful or unsuccessful. So in this chart, as I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the moon and the aspects that the moon gets. The moon is aspected tightly by Venus, not so tightly by the sun. That lets me know that it's a new moon, that it's near the sun. I noticed that the fourth house is not in very good shape because two malefics are there, Saturn and Rahu is there. And even though Jupiter's there, it's not in a good sign. It's in Virgo. So this fourth house doesn't look good to me. I noticed that the ascendant ruler is in the eighth house and Mars and Saturn aspect the ascendant. These are terrible. Jupiter will protect that ascendant ruler a little bit because there's a very tight aspect there.
Right.
Jupiter's
right. Again degrees. Right.
Jupiter's 25. Jupiter's 25 and Mercury's 23. There's a very tight aspect giving some protection. However, that's not a great aspect. It's got some protection. It's going to help, but it's also aspect in Capricorn. And we don't know exactly. We know it would be better if it was Jupiter was aspecting in a different sign. We know that. Okay. We don't know how much negativity. I have said recently in my updating ancient Hindu astrology and updating the art and practice of ancient Hindu astrology, those are the art and practice is now on ebook. So this information I'm about to tell you is there. But something after many, many years, I've noticed I had to change in my ancient Hindu astrology book when I would say that if Saturn is exalted in this house, it's wonderful for this and wonderful for that. And if Jupiter has fallen in this house, it's terrible for this and terrible for that. After all these years, I have had to change that in my original book from 1985, the ancient Hindu astrology. And what I say Saturn in Libra, there'll be good effects. And then right under that, I say Saturn is the one planet that even when it's well placed, doesn't give great effects. Jupiter, when it's fallen, doesn't give such terrible effects. That's just from experience. So in any case, the first thing, so after I analyze the chart and I see everything that I want to talk about, and after that, I'm going to go straight to the ascendant and the moon in the very beginning of the chart. So with a chart like this, the very, very specific things that jump out right from the start. Now, I have to analyze all the houses. I have to notice that Jupiter is retrograde, so the career may not be as important to the person. I noticed that Saturn is retrograde, so even though there's all those ninth house planets, the retrograde makes it more passive. Okay, so the point is everything has to be looked at. So this is why I say when the question is, how do you analyze a chart? I say, oh my God, what kind of question is this? I have to look at everything. And I do. I look at everything. After I get the feeling for what it is, okay? So in other words, oh, how wonderful. Sun, Venus, moon in the ninth house. Could this be any better for religion and philosophy? Yeah, it could be a hell of a lot better. Jupiter could be not so afflicted. This Jupiter is one of the most afflicted planets in the chart. It's in Virgo, and it's aspected by 2 malefics. So like in the beginning,
2 malefics, you mean? Conjunct 2 malefics.
Yeah. In the beginning days of astrology, like many clients, many students watching this, in the beginning days, I'd say this is fantastic for religion and for philosophy and travel. And this person will get great gurus. But then you see that Jupiter is afflicted. Okay? And you see that the 9th house ruler is retrograde. So this is, for example, a person with these 9th house planets, they might want to be a religious figure. They might want to work in a temple, in a church. They might want to be a religious teacher, or they might want to go into the travel industry.
Right.
But I couldn't predict that, because, and I would say to the person, I would say you have all that's necessary to go into religion, philosophy, or to have a travel business, but it's your choice. It's your choice. It won't happen on its own, because the ruler of the 9th house is passive. Passive. Free will comes into play. So these are the things that, as time goes by, and you know, after 20 years, you start to see all of them together. And one other point is that even today, this is amazing to me, but charts come alive to me a lot more than they did decades ago. But the amazing thing is that I will get a certain amount of information when I'm analyzing the chart. And what's missing, I'll look at it and say, ooh, this is great. I can tell the person about this great thing happening. I can warn them about this. I see all those things. But the thing that's missing when I'm analyzing the horoscope is the presence of the other person.
Exactly.
When I get on the phone or on the YouTube and I begin to talk, I begin to see things that I didn't see. And it startles me, because I said, how did I not see that? The fact is you can't see everything unless you're autistic and have the ability to, you know, where numbers are, you know, you could see 1,000 things and remember them all. But in the case of an astrologer, you'll never see it all. So a certain amount of it will come alive when you're doing the horoscope. And also, when you're doing a horoscope, this happened to me.
Just tell you one more thing from my experience. You just hit the nail there, James, because you know what? I feel that there are many times I don't take up readings because it's not a live reading. The live reading connects the chart with the person, and the vibrancies, I believe, change. As you said that, you know, you move on to the phone or something, and the vibrancies changes. So probably that is why you see so many things, and the person is there at the other end questioning, because that the aura gets attached to the chart.
And the other thing is, when you're doing a horoscope and you see very bad stuff, and you see very bad stuff coming up shortly, or you see a horoscope which is very difficult, the way I do that is I start out, see, normally I prefer to do a reading objectively, not knowing anything, because to me, it's going to be more powerful for them to hear the information that they need to hear without thinking that I got it from them.
Agreed.
But when I get a chart that is very difficult, where it's a difficult life, a difficult dasha, or something like that, or troubles are coming, I will start the reading saying, what brought you to have this reading? Right? Now, if they say, oh, I was just interested, or, oh, I saw your interview, that's not going to help me very much. I'll dig a little bit deeper, because I want to get them to say some of the stuff that's going to be, you know, I don't want to start out by saying this is a really difficult lifetime. I'd rather for them to bring it up if they're going to bring it up. Anyway, so So if I'm looking at this particular horoscope, I'm looking at the ascendant. The first thing I see is Mars, Saturn aspecting the ascendant, and the ascendant ruler in the 8th house, but aspected by Jupiter. So I know that I know that the feelings, I know it's not an easy lifetime, personally. I know that. It's pretty obvious. Now the moon, I love the placement of the moon, okay? The moon is wherever the ascendant ruler is, the person's playing out their karma. So that's in the 8th house. And in this case, because it's aspected by Jupiter, I will tell them, you know, it may be a little bit difficult personally, the confidence may be a little bit difficult, but that's from the ascendant. But where you're going to play out your karma from the ascendant is in the 8th house. Ascendant ruler in the 8th. So this person's going to like metaphysics, psychic stuff. There may be interest in handling other people's money. There may be wills or legacies. This is because it's aspected by Jupiter in particular. There could still be some, you know, metaphysical, psychic people, astrologers. They will have the ascendant ruler in the 8th. It'll hurt the ascendant terribly, but they will have an interest in metaphysical and psychic stuff. That's the positive element of it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to be speaking so much about how difficult the lifetime is from the ascendant, because who wants to talk about that? They don't particularly want to hear that. I'll mention it. But I'll talk about more the moon, because that's where the happiness is going to come from.
Right.
The moon is very, very close to Venus. So that tells me that the person is Venusian, that they love the arts, that they have a certain charm, they may be good looking. And the conjunction itself of Moon Venus makes a person very luscious. They love you know, sex. They love good foods. Moon Venus is the most luscious aspect for enjoying the materialistic universe. Okay.
Yeah. So they like all good things in life. Materially,
but some of these people can get involved in drugs or alcohol because they're too indulgent. But as long as they're not too indulgent, it's really good for all the good things in life. It's very good. And I will also, when I talk about the moon, I tell them wherever the moon is, that's where you play out your karma. So it's 9th house, religion, philosophy, higher knowledge, and travel. Now, I also explain to them that the moon needs to be bright in order to have abundance and charisma. The moon needs to be bright. This is a new moon. However, in this case, it doesn't matter that the moon is dim because it's aspected by a great benefic. So the moon is very strong, even though it's dim. Now, if that moon got too close to Venus,
right.
if the moon was 26, if the moon was 26 and Venus was 25 or 27, or 28 or 24, I would start to worry about the moon, even though Venus is the yoga karaka for this chart, even though Venus is a great benefic. It rules.
How does Venus become a yoga karaka for this chart? It's a Gemini ascendant.
Yeah, Venus is the best planet for, it's the best, it doesn't form a Raja Yoga, it forms a Raja Yoga with Mercury, but Venus, in the way I was taught, the best planet for Gemini or Virgo is Venus. They consider, because it rules the 12th and the 5th. I know it rules the 12th, so how does it get like that?
Yes.
There's lots and lots of rules, and it's too complicated, but the charts that I were given from my teachers said Venus is the best planet. And there may be some disagreement. That chart, it's in page 247 in my book, Ancient Hindu Astrology, the graph that shows this. Hold on one second. I'll actually hold it up for you. The graph that is shown it's traditional, but there are occasionally different opinions on this. But if you look, let's see, where is it? It's this very first one. I don't know, can you see that?
I can't see a graph, but I can see a table.
Oh, this is not showing for the students, is it?
No, it's not showing. So you need to move it a little down, probably, for us to
Well,
see.
no, but you mean for the students, can they see it, or they're looking at these charts?
They're looking at these charts. So they, you just a second. We can show it.
Make
Okay.
the screen. Okay, there we go. So this
This is
this.
this is a good and bad planet. Yes, yes, by virtue of rulership.
So
Yes.
look at the best planet for Gemini is Venus.
Venus.
Best planet for Virgo is Venus.
Hmm.
Okay, this is just a traditional graph. Okay,
Right.
then it says which planets form Raja Yoga for each ascendant.
So
you have to have that. In my book, I say, in the beginning days of astrology, you need to Xerox page 247 from that book and keep it in front of you, because you need to know the best planets and the functional malefics. In any case,
okay.
So even though Venus is the best planet for Gemini, even though Venus is a great benefic, in this case, Moon and Venus are 6 degrees apart. That's good. And we don't have to worry so much about the 12th house. But if it gets within 2 or 3 degrees, that 12th house influence of Venus, even though it's a Yoga Karaka, even though it's a benefic, it'll cause massive troubles to the moon. Okay. So in any case, I would talk about the moon being, the moon is giving charm, the moon is giving some happiness. So the moon is helping quite a bit with this, with the difficulties of the ascendant. Then I would see, if I'm looking at the chart, I'm looking at everything. I see that the marriage is not so good, because the 7th house ruler is Jupiter. Jupiter is in Virgo, not good. Jupiter is conjunct with 2 malefics, Rahu and Saturn. So this is spoiling married life. There's no Kuja dosha, but it's definitely causing problems. The partner may be intense or smothering because Rahu is so close to Jupiter. Saturn being close to Jupiter, that's just going to make difficulties, unhappiness. The partner could be older. Actually, in this case, the partner was older. So then I go to the Navamsha chart to see, does it get any better? And in that chart, it's still troublesome. It puts Rahu in the 7th house. So now this is
the mean nodes and the true nodes. So this has happened.
Is this where that problem came about?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so, okay. So that's okay. Take my word for it. When using the mean node, Rahu sits in the 7th. So now you've got a double influence of Rahu, because the 7th ruler, Jupiter, was with Rahu in the natal, and now Rahu's in the 7th. So now it's a double, oh, thank you. So now it creates a Rahu partner, which means the partner can be successful and powerful, but it's also going to be controlling and domineering. The bigger problem actually than Rahu in the Navamsha is the 7th house ruler in the 8th. So those things, they're not so good. Okay. So that's, so like, if I'm analyzing the chart, I'm not going to make a judgment about the 7th house until I see the Navamsha. But the Navamsha in this case matches the natal. The married life is no good.
So it cements the fact that you will not be able to see a happy married life, right?
It's from the horoscope.
No.
Let's put it like this. Let me put it like this. Astrology is never 100%. I would say that if you see 10 cases like this, 7 of them are going to tell you marriage is terrible. 2 or 3 of them may say, well, I had a bad one, but then I got someone really good. But most of them, it's not so good.
So, James, now a question here as an astrologer. People come to you for reading, okay? And you see something like this. How do you break it to them?
Okay, I'm going to answer this question, but after this, let me try to go through how to do a chart, because that's what I'm trying to answer. People want to know, how do I do a chart? Okay. How do I break it to them?
Yeah.
When I start the reading, I say, wow, this chart is very very oriented toward religion and philosophy and travel. The third house is incredibly strong. This is a very artistic horoscope. So this is the overview. I'm just giving the overview, right, in the very beginning. And I say, wow, it's great for religion and philosophy. And the third house is probably the strongest house in the chart. This is important. This is important. So many people say, how could that house be important? There's no planets in there. The third house is probably the strongest house in the chart because the third house is being aspected by its own sign, by its own planet, the sun. And the third house is music, dance, and drama. And Moon and Venus are aspecting the third house. Venus, the planet of art, aspecting the house of art. The sun being willpower, aspecting the third house, which is willpower. Moon, a great benefic. So the third house is super strong. So when I'm doing when I'm giving the overview, I say this is I'll say it's tremendous for the arts, and the willpower is strong. The excitement, the desire to get to do everything you can do, to do this and to do that, and to run errands and to be energetic and courageous and want to get into everything. Okay, and then I'll say married life is the biggest vulnerability of the chart. And they'll go, yeah. But that's how I'll do it. I'll say the married life is not so good. It's, so I'll say that, and they'll either comment like, yeah, or they won't. But I know in this case, I know it's bad. So I'm putting that into context of the other stuff. Yeah. Now this chart is a little bit more difficult because aside from the Moon Venus aspect, this lifetime is not so easy because of that Saturn in the fourth, these malefics in the fourth, Saturn aspecting the ascendant, Mars aspecting the ascendant. So I'm going to try to focus a little bit more on that ninth house and the Moon Venus as much as I can. But so another thing is, as I'm looking at the horoscope, I see Saturn in the fourth. Not so good. I see Rahu in the fourth. Not so good. It may be good for land and real estate, but it's not good for mother. And then I'll see Jupiter in a bad sign, and I'll see the ruler of the fourth in the eighth, but it is aspected by Jupiter, so that's helping. But this person had a mother that was a tyrant. This person here, her mother was a bad mother. And you can see from that, you can see that. Now, part of why I say that this horoscope is a difficult horoscope, and so I want to focus more on Moon and Venus, and Sun being with Moon and Venus, those are good. Part of it is Saturn in the fourth house is always unhappiness. It's unhappiness in the heart. And I just think that the happiness in the heart is difficult with this kind of fourth house. So, and then you look at career. Now, this is a person that didn't really have a career. They had children. And you can see the children clearly because the Venus is the fifth house ruler. Now, Jupiter is badly placed, so there will be trouble with children. Because Jupiter, right. But the fifth house ruler, Venus, is in the ninth. Yes. That's the best house of a chart. The fifth and ninth are the two best houses. And that Venus is conjunct with the moon, tightly conjunct, like 6 degrees, not too tight, but tight, okay? The moon, I consider a planet that is special. The word I use for the moon is special. Of course, Venus is a benefic, Jupiter's a benefic, moon is a benefic. Moon is a benefic, and I also call it special. It's special because it's the most important influence in a chart. So I think this person would have special children. And she did. She had some famous children. And there was some happiness from children, but there was also suffering from children because of that Jupiter. But that part of the chart is pretty strong, and travel and higher knowledge is pretty strong. When you look at the career, Ketu is there. And it's aspected by Jupiter. So there could be a spiritual career. There could be a consciousness raising career, things like that. The ruler of the career is retrograde, so it's not such a strong impulse. But it could be a good spiritual career because Ketu there, aspected by Jupiter in Jupiter's own sign. So the career is looking not so strong.
Right.
It could be strong if the person goes for a spiritual consciousness raising career.
Right.
But the ruler's retrograde. And okay, so then you go to the Dasamsha chart. So I don't want to make any conclusions. People are asking, how do you do a chart? So I see, oh, look, a spiritual career. But I don't want to make any conclusions here till I get to the Dasamsha chart.
Right.
So I look at the Dasamsha chart, and the 10th house ruler, Mercury, is it's in the 8th. Okay? That's not helping. Now it becomes the only kind of successful career needs to be metaphysical or psychic or spiritual. Now, when I look at the divisional charts, I look at the 7th for the Navamsha and the 10th for the Dasamsha. I will look a little bit at the first house. The first house ruler is also Mercury in the Dasamsha. So again, it's in the 8th, so we have metaphysical. But Saturn is sitting in the first house of the Dasamsha. That's not helping anything. So this person didn't really have much of a career. But this person was born in 1922. There weren't that many people doing metaphysical, psychic, spiritual careers. But that's the career that should have been done if there was going to be. Okay, your question.
So you did tell that I've been holding it for quite some time. So just needed a, just a yes from you. So you said that Jupiter is retrograde. So it would need a free will moves in. So you believe that a retrograde
planet mean what? It would mean what?
Free will. You said you used the word free will.
But this Jupiter's afflicted. There's nothing good about this Jupiter. Nothing. Zero. Nothing good about this Jupiter. The houses that Jupiter rules become afflicted. They become bad because Jupiter's bad, but you're not going to stop the negative effect, okay? Because Jupiter's afflicted. But what I'm saying is, if this person wanted to do, let's say, I don't know, a career in business or something like that, a 7th house career, the Jupiter, well, I can't even say that. This is just an afflicted Jupiter. Let's take the 10th house. So there's a retrograde 10th house ruler, which means there could be a career here. Even though Jupiter's afflicted, the 10th house has some good influences. Jupiter's aspecting its own sign.
Right.
That's good for a spiritual career. Ketu's good for a spiritual career.
What about medicine? What about medicine? Because Jupiter is also one of those teachers. What about teaching?
I'm not looking for a Jupiter career for this person. This person has one of the most afflicted, not one of the most, but this person's up in the 80% of affliction of Jupiter. There's nothing good about this Jupiter.
Okay.
So I'm not going to look. So that's why if this person wants to do a religious or spiritual career because of the Sun, Moon, Venus in the 9th, they're going to have troubles because of Jupiter.
Okay.
If I'm looking for medicine, I'm looking for Mars in the 6th house. Mars in the 6th house is one of the few truly good, nothing particularly wrong with the 6th house. Mars is in the 6th house, which is making very strong health, which this person has, and very strong health, very strong ability to defeat enemies and jealous people and competitors. And if the person wants to do something with health, it would be using herbs, Ayurveda, acupuncture, because Ketu aspects that Mars.
Right.
But this horoscope, honestly, the strongest house is the 3rd house. Everything else is all mixed around. I would say, look, if you want to do a spiritual metaphysical career, it's a done deal. From the Dasamsha and the natal chart, it's clearly a spiritual career. However, the best house of the chart is the 3rd. And the moon is conjunct with Venus, the arts. So what this person's going to love the best is the arts. And they will also be talented with public relations and advertising, anything that takes lots of energy and running around and doing things. So this becomes complicated. If you want to be happy, you do the third house, the arts, or the public relations or advertising. If you go specifically for what is indicated as a career, I would say it's spiritual, metaphysical, consciousness raising. And this would be my opinion. So, you know, other astrologers may see it differently. I'm just telling you, the question was, how do I do a chart? That's how I do a chart. I look at everything. I look at everything I can before making a judgment for myself. And then I get all the different pieces of information, and that's how I do it. So but in the beginning days, I couldn't do this. I had to look, oh, look, Mars is in the 6th. I had to go step by step.
So
it's not
because we are not having the ability in the beginning of our career to process so much of information as we develop over a period of time. So it's more of practice and time that will lead you to where you are today.
In the beginning days, I told you that I would study a chart for 3 or 4 days. It's not a joke. I was so scared. I was so shy. I had come back from India, and I did not choose astrology. I met some guy. I was looking for an apartment. I told him I had just gotten back from India. He said, oh, I want you to do my chart. I said, I am not ready to do charts. He kept going and I said, I'm not taking money for this. He said, I'll cut your hair. I'm a hair cutter. We'll trade. I said, okay. I did his chart. He cut my hair. And then my phone never stopped ringing from his friends. And so that's how I became an astrologer. So when I would analyze the horoscope, I would see these, I wouldn't see everything back then, but I would see a lot. I would write down religion, philosophy, higher knowledge. I would write it because I don't want to forget it,
right.
That. And the very first client that was paying me, this was traumatic. I'm lucky I continued to do astrology because I looked at the horoscope, and when I started doing Jyotish, I believed that it should be done by you making predictions. Leave out the free will. I don't do it that way at all anymore. But I thought this is, you make predictions and that's the way it is. I don't think that's a good way to do it. And I don't think it'll work either. I think you can only make 3 or 4 predictions and the session's over and they won't all come true anyway. But in any case, the essence of the chart was that this person had a terrible relationship with her father. Terrible. And it kind of dominated the chart. And anyway, there was good stuff in the chart too, but I started off the reading saying, well, I think that you've had trouble in your marriages because the relationship with the father was so terrible. And she looks at me and says, no, my relationship with my father is great. I said, what? She said, my relationship with my father is great. It's great. I said, listen, I'm not ready to do this. Why don't you leave? She said, no, just keep going. I was mortified. So I said some other things and then I said, and I have to tell you, I said, I could be wrong again, but I think the relationship with the mother was no good. And she says to me, the relationship with my mother was no good because my father was a raging alcoholic and she didn't protect me. So I learned a big lesson. I said, well, why did you tell me that the relationship with the father was so great? Oh, it's good now. So the lesson here is that you have to make the client comfortable enough so that they can even hear what you're saying. And you don't start out with negative stuff. You try to start out with the positive stuff.
Okay.
That's how I do a chart.
So this brings us with beautiful pearls of knowledge on how to see a chart and how to handle a person coming right there for you. Don't start up with negatives. Give the person enough faith to listen to you, what you have to hear. With this note, we end this session, but we will be back for more with James on another chart. Keep watching out at this space. Thank you so much, James, for this.
Thank you.